spark, values, and getting things done. That's what I'm talking about with Joey Chandler on this episode of Intent on Purpose. Hello, my name is Laura Hanson-Brexa, and I talk to people who put time, energy, and talent into what they believe. Welcome to Joey Chandler.
So Joey, what is it that made you so passionate about helping others succeed? Why did you become a business coach?
There is something that is, when someone sees something about themselves and they step past whatever it is they saw, and they see this sense of like, oh my gosh, I can do it. That sense of I can do itness. That's a really wonderful moment to be a part of. Like, just from a pure egocentric and really enjoyable to be able to say I was in that moment that helped a person see past something and take some action. That's and see something great about themselves. That's a really, really, really enjoyable moment.
I like that positivity, and something I noticed from your webpage is the celebratory part of it. Now, I've been reading self-help books for a long time. I've even helped young women pass this program called Personal Progress, where they set goals and achieved them, and they were pretty hard. And some of the things always start with what's your weaknesses instead of your strengths. They don't build on your strengths, and it's kind of depressing before it even begins. But your program about finding your values starts with celebrating. And you have this quote on your webpage that I really loved. Celebration isn't about ignoring the hard stuff. It's about fueling yourself for it. I want you to talk about those things. Tell me more.
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out. It's something that I've stumbled upon a couple years ago. This wasn't like a inherently, like, I'm not this inherently like celebration, like woohoo sort of guy. Like, that's not what it was. It was entirely pragmatic. I created a program, and it started off kind of basic. It was like, what's your goal? What are your fears? What do your values say to do? What actions can you take? What did you learn from that, and how can you celebrate yourself? So there was 6
Mm.
steps, and again, and to me, I was like, wow, this makes total sense. It sounds like pretty much every other coaching program on the planet. And I started working with people, and I'd get on the call with them, and there would just be this level of heaviness, like this drain, like this, like, they're just going through life, like whatever. And I honestly got kind of angry. I'm like, we have celebration in the program. Like, why aren't you celebrating yourself? Like, it was just really funny. Like, I got personally offended by the fact that my people, and I've learned enough to take a deep breath and recognize that maybe there's something I'm doing, or I was saying that rather than just blaming them. And I was talking with someone a couple years ago, and I, I forget what led to it, but I said, well, let's just move celebration to the front. And and I remember that a couple people said, like, can we do that? And I'm like, this is my program. We're working together. Like, there's no reason we can't do anything. And so I moved celebration to the front, and immediately it had a massive difference. And um and the best example of this was a little while after that, I was actually doing my taxes, and I had put my taxes off forever and ever. And I had a big pile of papers. I hadn't made the money I wanted to. I was embarrassed, just all the stuff that you normally have. And I was trying to force my way through it, and it wasn't working. And then I said, "Hey, wait a minute. I just talked about celebration. Let me give this a try." And I said, "Okay, well, what can I celebrate?" I usually ask, "What can I celebrate about yesterday?" But with that one, with the taxes, I said, "Well, what can I celebrate from this past year?" And I just gave myself the freedom to look back and acknowledge some of the things that I had accomplished that year and I'd forgotten. And I was like, okay. And that just gave me the foundation to get them done. This taxes still sucked. I still owed money. I still didn't make the money I wanted to, everything, but I had the energy to go through it. And then as I did this with more clients, I just noticed that when we started with celebration, there was just this level of energy and again, I can do itness that allowed us to actually dive into whatever challenges they were facing that particular day. And so I actually went and did some research on this because I was like, wow, something's working here. Like this is more than me. And it turns out that when you celebrate yourself, you trigger dopamine in your brain. And your brain is that's the feel good part of your brain. It triggers a sense of self efficacy or I can do itness. And so when you celebrate something, and we always celebrate something they did the day before, doesn't matter the size, but you have this sense of like, hey, I can do it. And then that leads into the future questions. But I find that if I skip over the celebration aspect, it gets there's just a level of weight, there's a level of heaviness that isn't isn't necessary. And we don't ignore we get to the frustrations and whatever they're dealing with, but by celebrating first, it absolutely it transformed my life and it made a huge difference when I work with people. I can't hear you.
I think I know what you're talking about. I was talking to a woman at a conference. She's a little bit older than me. She said she's not going to be able to write this book. Not going to be able to write this book. And I started talking to her longer. She'd raised like 7 kids. One of them was special needs. She'd come from Canada. So I started, like pumping her up. Well, you've done this and you've done this and you've done this. And I think she even started sitting up straighter. And she was like, yeah, yeah, yeah. So absolutely, I can see what you're saying. Now that you explained it that way, we do start thinking about what we've already done, what we already have, and you do start thinking that you can build on success. And certainly, when you're saying about taxes, there are non-financial successes.
Yeah,
Like,
there's a bunch of different things that they could be. Yesterday, uh, my mom had a car accident and she was really upset. And so I went through, like, what can you celebrate about yesterday? After once we got a little bit grounded and she was just trying to get through it. And it would just helped her get grounded and, deal with all the stuff that she had to deal with, regarding the accident. And it was really nice. And I'll be honest, like, there are a bunch of times when I wake up in the morning when I'm like, I don't wanna celebrate anything. Either I had, something bad that happened the day before or whatever it is, but starting off every day or starting off meetings or before I talk to someone, what can I celebrate? It's actually really fun now. My clients now come and they're like, "Oh, I got something to celebrate." Like, they all get excited to share. Yeah.
and I think that photographers and artists, they see things that people who are not artists see. They see empty space, they see light differently. Do you think that that experience gives you a little bit more of a unique perspective on things, that you can see things from different angles maybe? Does that help at all? Is there any translation in that, in what being able to write a program does, or see people differently?
It helps see the greatness in people. Yeah, as a photographer, I was a family photographer. Your job is kind of make look people look good, and what I specialized in is very natural photos. And it, not every photo I took was great, but there were multiple ones where I just was able to capture the essence of that person. And I didn't know it then when I was being a photographer, but that's part of what makes me me is the ability to see, the greatness in someone, to acknowledge it, to celebrate it, to own it, and then to put it to use to achieve something, whether it be in a photo or growing their business, writing a book, anything like that.
That's pretty cool.
Absolutely.
I think that people's talents end up being building on each other and building on each other. And when you can combine them all and don't ignore experiences, say, oh, that doesn't count for this or that doesn't count for this. They really can all build on to something greater. Do you
Yeah.
agree?
Oh, 100%. It's because our values are there. My values are connection, curiosity, and fun. And my photos, when you look back at it, it's be like I connected with the people, I got curious about what made them great, and then I made the photo sessions fun. And the result of all that was I had a decent ability to take good photos. And absolutely, that's why it's so critical, especially nowadays when people are bouncing around from job to job, to get clear on your values, because when you can do that, you can look back at the job and see the kind of the stepping stones. Not every job will have every be 100% a reflection of your values, but every job reflects your values in some way. And when you can see those little stepping stones, that gives you the foundation to move forward. And it starts to create a thread. I think a big problem these days for people is that so many of us are bouncing, the jobs that we're going all over the place. The idea of a 30-year career is is gone. And so you can look at those things and say, like, wow, this person has a lot of uncertainty in their life. They can't hold it down job. They bounce around. And it's up to us to say, now, wait a minute here. This is how all of this ties together. Here's the thread through my life. And here's how all of these experiences will help me be more successful and contribute to, this new company when you're talking to a manager or a hiring manager. And knowing your values and being clear on that is really helpful.
Now, before we talk about how you find out your values, starting with that celebration and that program that you have, I want to know a little bit more about, in your experience, what happens to people when they go against their values.
Y it's just hard. It's just life is much harder. You feel, I like to think of it as alignment, because it's not just your values, it's your plans, your goals. There's a whole, it's a collection of things that when they're aligned, you have this sense of like, "Hey, wait a minute, I can do this. I can go forward. I can take action. I can solve problems even if I don't know how to solve that problem. I know I can do it." Again, that sense of I can do itness. When you don't have when you're not present to your values and there's some misalignment, you're not as curious. You're certain that things are a certain way and why you can't do anything about it. You're certain that you're going to fail. You're certain that it's not gonna work out. And generally speaking, your view of the world gets smaller. There's also a lot of somatic experience. One of the great things that I really started to explore recently is there is a body feeling when you are operating from alignment. You have an energy, a openness, like a sense of like it just feels different in your body versus when you're like, I suck, they suck, we all suck, all of that. You're tightened down. I get really justified and righteous, and all of this. It's just a far different feeling. And so one of the things that I'm doing for myself and with my clients is just really developing the habit of noticing that feeling, understanding both sides because they're both going to happen, and then going through the process of creating, of realigning your values, your goals, your plans, and your actions in that moment. Because our bodies know things about our lives faster than we do. And if we can recognize our bodies saying something's off, then we can do something about it faster.
So, what we've talked about so far is you choose things based on your values, even if you haven't figured out your values yet. Your body is reacting whether you are living by your values or you're not, because it's in there somewhere. And you can be using your past experiences to figure out what's going on. They're going to build on each other. Kind of on what we've talked about so far.
Yep. Yeah.
And you like helping people. So I want, now that we know what happens if you live your values and you don't live your values, and you're living your values whether you know it or not. Now I want to hear how you teach people to find the values. Please tell me how you do that. Because I
Yeah.
thought it was fascinating. That's why you're here. I mean,
Yeah, there's
you
3
are.
there's 3 questions that you ask when you, to clarify your values. The first is when you interact with people, how do you want them to feel? And this will be something like safe or heard or motivated or inspired. It'd be something like that. Then you ask yourself, when you experience those feelings, let's just say, someone said safe, heard, and motivated. That's what they said. When you experience feeling safe, heard, motivated, how do you feel? And that feeling will be something like love or joy or happiness, excitement, freedom. It'll be something in that realm. And that's what I call your core word. That's kind of like who you are at your core. But that's a big, broad word, and it means different things to different people. And so then we say, okay, like my core word is love. And then you can say, okay, what are 3 words that help me experience more love or more joy or more happiness? And for me, it's connection, curiosity, and fun. Like when I feel connected to someone, when I'm curious about them, and when I'm having fun, that's when to me that's what love is. And everybody's going to have a different definition. But there's just 2 caveats on this. Is one, you always want to limit to 3 values. And it's not that you don't have more than 3, but you want to do 3 because when things go bad, you wake up on a bad day and you want to ask yourself, how can I use my values in this situation? If you have more than 3, it's just going to be harder to remember. And in the time when things don't go well, when life is happening, you don't have the energy to remember 5, 7, or 10. So it's a totally pragmatic um, uh, reasoning for this. You want 3. And of those 3, you want one word to be what I call a spark word. Something like fun, play, adventure, curiosity, creativity, something in that realm. And the reason for this is that word will help you broaden your awareness in times of stress. I I put this in because I was working with clients, and we would go through, we identify their values, and they would say something like, authenticity, growth, and integrity. All great words, 100% awesome words. But their faces, there'd be no energy, there'd be no smile, there would be no, like, joy, like, excitement. And these were people that I knew, especially when I was getting started, these were friends of mine. I'm like, "Dude, you got a lot more energy than this." And so I would start to say, I was like, "Hey, is fun or play part of, your life?" And 2 things would happen. 1, they would immediately smile, big energy release, like, "Yes, of course," like, and then they would say, "But I didn't think I could use that as a value. I thought I had to use these other words." And I call those words, the problem we have with value is that we adultify our words. We try to make them too serious, to make them sound good, because that's what we've heard in, the corporate workshops that we've been a part of. And so again, this started to work, and I was like, "Wow, let me do a little research on this." And there's a researcher, her name is Barbara Fredrickson, and she developed this theory called the broaden and build theory. And she pointed out words like fun and play and creativity, they broaden your awareness in times of stress. And so when by including one of these spark words in your values, you're constantly broadening your awareness of a situation. And the idea is that, let's say you're something doesn't go well. You did a presentation at work and it just didn't go. If you're like, okay, what my values of integrity, growth, and honesty, that it will force you into something, and it will feel heavy. But if one of your values is, say it's integrity, growth, and adventure, that's going to broaden your awareness and help you find answers and solutions that are outside of the box of the normal, the quote adultified values. So at the end of the day, you always want to have 3 values, and one of them should be a spark word.
I love that spark word. So I love that you have, well, how do you want to make others feel? That's a real good way to start that.
Yeah, you start with how do you want others to. I was gonna say, you start with how you want others to feel, and then you think about your own feeling, and that helps you get to you rather than what you think you should be.
So you wake up on a bad day. So you want a spark word to be the one that you can live on your worst day.
So 4 years ago, like this month, 2022, I burnt out really bad. I was going through a divorce, living alone, my business was really struggling, just not in a good place. And I woke up one day and I said, "I can't be anything but me. I just don't have the energy." And a couple days after that, I said, "You know what? If I can only be me, then who am I and how can I be more of that?" And at the time, I was coaching people. I was coaching people on purpose and values, and I had 5 values at that time. And I I realized, like, I knew my values, so I had a sense of who I was, but I realized that there's just something was off, because if it was working, I wouldn't be burnt out. So I knew there just was something. And I had a conversation with a friend of mine a few weeks later, and he told me a story about the Navy SEALs. And he said how the Navy SEALs put things in sets of 3, because when you are getting shot at or in a war zone, you can remember 3 things far easier than anything else. And completely out of a sense of like, well, that sounds easier, I'll just give it a try. I reduced my values down to, at that time, it was connection, curiosity, and courage. And so then I could wake up every day and just, how can I bring a little connection, a little curiosity, and courage to my day? And that led to baby steps, and those baby steps led to bigger steps, and I recovered within a few months. But having that curiosity, and this was the part that was there, just, it forces you, and I was doing what Barbara Fredrickson was, it forces you to broaden your awareness, because it's so easy to get stuck into our way of thinking about things. And you start to just broaden your awareness, and you start to see things that you would normally have seen from a kind of a traditional way. And over time, people often ask me, like, well, do our core values change? And I don't think our core values change all that much, but how we describe them does. So
Tell
my
me more about.
Yeah, so like when I first started off, my core values were connection, curiosity, and courage. And I played with it, and there just was something, just, it felt sort of right, but not 100% right. Like, there was just times where the courage part wasn't quite right. And then I went to contribution, and then success, and then it would landed on fun. And what I realized was that, for me, fun is about success, contribution, and courage. That's all, it's the prism that makes up our fun. Did my core values change, or did my languaging of that feeling, of that essence, get better? And I think if you believe that you come from a spirit, a soul, an energy, a God, just, or maybe just the way the human brain is wired, that thing has been with us for a very long time. So my sense is that it's not so much that things change, but how we describe them does. But then what does change is how we manifest those things. Fun for me growing up is different. Fun when when my son was born, I had no idea playing catch would be as fun as it was. And so, the manifestation of those things change, but I think the values stay very. I think they stay much more similar than we might think.
I get it. Different stages of life. I took your test, by the way.
Oh,
Your
well, good.
test. I took your short.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what were your values?
I love how you set it up that it gives you the words back at each question. The values are faith, authenticity, growth.
I'd invite you to consider, I'm getting some creativity. Is that part of your world?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'd invite you to look at, maybe replacing one of those. All those are great, but adding in creativity, I think, would,
Yeah.
again, broaden your awareness. And maybe, like, for you, I authenticity is one of those ones that, like, when you're being authentic, you're being creative.
Yes.
And so by putting creativity in there, you would incorporate authenticity into it, but also get the benefit of that sparkiness.
Yes.
Yeah. So
So
so you
if
said
I would say
you said peace and creativity.
faith, authenticity. Okay. So, well, the thing I like the most is to feel peaceful. And what I think the questions led, right, to faith, authenticity, and growth, but faith, creativity, and growth.
Okay, perfect.
Is that so?
Yeah,
I can just faith, creativity, and growth.
yeah, and when those things
Okay.
come together, you have a strong sense of peace.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then you can go the reverse. When you don't feel peaceful, one of those is missing.
Yes. I see it. I get it. I love it because creativity is how you solve problems. Mhm. Huh, lovely.
There you go.
And that's how then I use my core values to address the problem. And you should go on your website, take that little short illuminating values finder. Anything else you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, so
Tell
after
me more.
a person
Yeah.
identifies their values, you now have faith, or faith, creativity, and growth.
Hmm.
Identifying your values is awesome. Makes a big difference. You can look back in your life and you can use it. But one of the things that I learned after burning out is that you need a way of actually applying your core values. I call it your core process. And the idea is, and this again, this came out of my work, is I once I burnt out, by using my values to recover from burnout, I went hog wild. I was like core values, like I went a I got a little much, and and I started
Pendulum
talking
swung, huh?
and I started talking to people and working with people, and over a couple of months, I just realized like something was off. Something was not working as well as I knew it could because I had recovered from burnout, which is not something that many people do, especially by themselves, especially post COVID, and without doing a ton of yoga or meditation or journaling and all that kind of stuff. And so I knew that there was some power there. But in the way that I was describing and just helping people identify their values, there was something missing because the results were not as profound or dramatic as I knew were possible. And so I had this idea of like, oh, you need to have your core values, but then you need to have a core process. You need to have a way of actually applying your values to your goals. And you want to apply your values on a day-to-day basis, or at least a very regular basis, because using our values is a practice. It's a muscle. One of the reasons why corporate core values don't work all that much is that we set these big corporate core values, forget about them, and then a month later we're like, okay, well, let's figure out if we're going to use our core values of who we should hire or who we should fire or what direction we should go. And if you don't practice using something, you just don't have the muscle of using it, so you're just not going to be as good with it. So you want to have a system that you can use. And this ended up being what I call the alignment engine. It's the 6 questions, and it's what can you celebrate about yesterday? It starts with that. Then what did you learn from that? And by doing that, that puts you into a growth mindset. And then you say, what's my goal? And it's just like the goal right now. I want to do a podcast. I want to write a book. I want whatever that goal is. And then this is critical. What's the fears that come up as soon as you think of that goal? Because any goal you set, it does not matter the goal. It could be a small goal, it could be a big goal. Some doubt, some worries, some fear, something is going to come up. And that's simply our brains and our bodies protecting us. Because when you set a goal, especially a meaningful goal, you increase the chances of you failing. That just happens. And so your body's like, hey, here's all the reasons why that's not going to work so that you can stay safe in your but by acknowledging those fears, I'm not good enough, I suck, they suck, whatever that is, you just give space, and it actually allows the amygdala part of your brain to relax, and it reduces your stress, and then you can ask, "What do my values say to do?" And the problem is that if you ask, "What do my values say to do?" first, your fears are always louder than your values. So you can ask, "What do my values say to do?" But those doubts are going to come up really loud, and they're just going to weigh you down. You can get past them a little bit, but they will weigh you down. And then after you say, hey, what do my values say to do? You come up with a list of ideas. Then you create clarity and confidence by asking, what is one thing I can do today? And you pick that one thing and you go do it. And the best thing is, as soon as you go do that one thing, that will give you something to celebrate tomorrow. And so the whole process repeats.
Very useful. So, what's the biggest problem that could be solved with this on the biggest scale, and what's some of the smallest ones?
Um, I don't think that I mean, one of the reasons I do this work is because we have huge political, social, environmental issues that need to be solved. Our kids are feeling lost, people are feeling lost. AI is taking jobs. There's massive amounts of uncertainty. There's people are not able to communicate in a way that works. We're we're seeing political turmoil. We got people getting pulled off the streets. There's a bunch of different things that are going on, and my belief is that the way that we're going to solve those problems is by people acting, being clear on their values and helping themselves and others experience more of them. And so uh, it and to do that, it just takes work. It takes having that process, and it takes practice and doing it over and over again. So one of the reasons I do this work is because I think it will contribute to solving the major issues. And for the smallest things, it's awesome. I did stand up comedy for a couple months last year. I just got walked into a bar one night and they had stand up comedy, and I gave it a try. Then I ended up doing it for um, I don't know, 10 or 12 times, and I realized I came to learn that I'm not very funny in a stand up sense. So I stopped. But one of the about 3 or 4 uh, open mics in, I bombed really bad. Just I said some jokes, and there was like the only sound in the bar was the guy in the back shit making a drink. That that was
Wow.
it. Nothing, like it was it was horrible. And so I went to bed just because when you bomb in comedy, like it is a heart, it is a gut punch that is really really interesting. And I went to bed like just frustrated. But I woke up in the morning. I'm like, okay, what can I celebrate? I got up. What did I learn? You really need to learn how to bomb. Like to recover from a bomb is an art form. What's my goal? Like, I want to do it again. What are my fears? Well, I'm not funny. I know this is gonna be bad. And I ended up going. I ended up getting back up and doing it for a handful more times. And so is that like a major, is that a major thing? Like, is big in my life, maybe not big in the world, but I use the exact same process that I would use to solve a goal in a big situation to recover from bombing.
Hmm. It is a big deal. I'm glad that that applied, though. It's a big personal deal to be that much rejection. That's pretty awkward. So, how do you put your values to purpose?
So I think our purpose is to help ourselves and others experience our values. However you want to name your purpose, like for you, if you help yourself and others experience more faith, creativity, and growth, that will fulfill on whatever purpose you have.
So, is that how you leverage your values to create something bigger?
Yeah, you create something bigger immediately when you start to say, how can I help myself and others experience those values? And you want to do that because it, the more that you're around people that are present to creativity, faith, and growth, the more that you are more, you have more people around you, you're going to experience those at a new level. You know what it's like to walk into a room where you feel more creative than everybody else. That just weighs you down. And I think this is really important for when we start looking at social and political issues, things like racism and sexism and biases and all of those things weigh down our ability to share our values with others and to experience our values. So those outside forces, which are oftentimes far bigger than us and outside of our own control, hinder our ability to really experience and share our values. So that's why we have to get clear on our values, figure out how I can experience more of them, and then what can I do to help others experience more of them, and then start to explore what's getting in the way. What's getting in the way of people being creative? Well, there's so much uncertainty in the world that would hinder the creative nature of someone. Not get rid of it completely, but weigh it down.
So, how to bring out the best in people's values, how to let them feel free to have their. How do you make sure you don't assume what someone else's values are by looking at?
Ask, what are your values?
Ask him
Just ask.
instead of assuming. I think people can assume what other people's values are and then treat them as
Yeah,
such. They could be
yeah.
way off.
Yeah. And this is why knowing your own values is so helpful, because you start to see where your values show up and where they don't, and the nuances of, like, the more that you explore creativity, you're going to see that, there's creativity in your job, and with your podcast, creativity as a mom, there's creativity just in creating art, there's creativity in getting your voice out politically and socially. There's creativity is going to mean a bunch of different things. And then you can talk to people and say, hey, my one of my values is creativity. Is that one of yours? Like, maybe you might get a sense. And they may say, well, yeah, actually it is. And then you can ask, what does creativity mean to you? And they're going to have a whole different understanding of creativity. And by having a conversation, you can start to expand not only your own awareness, but deepen your connection. I'm a left leaning on the political side, and I talk to people throughout the whole political spectrum. And I oftentimes get to the point where I just say, like, hey, what are your values? How can we talk about that? And that it it makes for a longer conversation. Like, you got to have some patience in that conversation, but it does create the foundation to actually have conversations, because everybody has values. There's places where we're successful with them, and there's places where we struggle. But if everyone has values, then we can talk about them and start to find that connection, that common ground, to create something that works for everybody.
I love what you said about common ground. You certainly can have liberals and conservatives who have the same values.
Yeah, and they may look different, and that's where you wanna have conversation. You wanna be like, "Okay, hey, what is," you know, uh, connection is gonna mean something different to me than other people.
Yeah, I love that thought. So where can people find you, Joey? Where can they find you?
Yeah, if they go to certaingrowth.com, that will be everything, and what I'm looking for actually is people that really wanna grow this year. I'm working on a book on resolutions for the end of the year, and so I'm looking for folks that really wanna grow and will be open to exploring how they can use their values to achieve that.
Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Top 5 takeaways from Joey Chandler. Start with celebration. It builds energy and confidence. Know your values. They guide your decisions and direction. Misalignment equals stress. Alignment equals clarity plus momentum. Keep it simple. 3 values max. Be sure to include one spark value like fun or creativity. Use a system. Celebrate to reflect, to goal, to face. Fears to action.